Welcome to today's webinar by Harbinger Systems. The topic for today's webinar is Building Next-Gen HR Solutions with People Analytics. Before getting started with the webinar, I would like to do a couple of housekeeping checks. Please type in yes if you can hear me clearly. I repeat, please type in yes in the chat box if you can hear me clearly. Okay, I can see a couple of yes coming in, so the audio is working fine. The webinar recordings and the slide decks will be shared with the participants after the webinar. We would like this to be an interactive session and therefore would encourage all the attendees to send in their questions using the chat box. You can send in your questions at any point of the time in the webinar, but we will be answering them only at the end of the webinar in the Q&A session. I am Lalit Kumar, Business Analyst at Harbinger Systems and your host for the webinar today. And my co-speaker for the webinar is Gautam Mainkar.
Hello everybody, I'm a data analyst with Harbinger Systems.
So let's just run through the agenda of the webinar. So we would start by talking about modern day HR solutions. So how does a modern day HR solution look, what it does, what it cannot do. Then we'll we'll move to talk about need of people analytics. Why is people analytics needed? Where are current HR solutions falling short? So we will discuss that. Then we will talk about people analytics in detail, its role and implementation. Then we will discuss two interesting use cases wherein we will show how people analytics can be used to improve the efficiency for talent acquisition, and we will also showcase a use case wherein we will show how people analytics help organization to optimize the training programs. And at the last, we would have the Q&A session. So let's start by understanding how has HR solutions evolved over a period of time. So initially there were no specialized tools. Most of the work was done on paper or was done using spreadsheets. As a result, there were issues of data inconsistencies, data duplication, no proper communication between teams. So those were the problems that were faced at that point of time. So to overcome those set of problems came in a set of tools which were like specialized for HR functions. So these set of tools were specifically targeted for solving problems within the HR function. So problems that required interaction across different business functions were not really handled by such tools, even though they digitize the information and data consistency and all those things were addressed, but again this was restricted to the HR function itself. Moving ahead in the time, there came in integrated HR systems. So these systems were unified. So the HR function could talk to other business function using these kinds of systems. So be it HR talking to the delivery, be it HR talking to the sales. So the data and the platform was shared across systems, bringing about much more efficiency to the HR function. Now, having seen these three stages of the evolution of HR solution, what's next? Where does the opportunity lie for the HR systems to evolve? So before going deep into what's next, let's understand where are we right now. So if we talk about a modern day HR solution, how does it look? So typically most of the modern day HR solutions are cloud based. So factors such as easy maintenance, easy upgrades, flexibility to scale up and scale down, and capital free expenditure at the initial stage of setup. So all these factors have pushed HR solution to move towards the cloud. Next is the social media integration. So this is probably in the mainstream now. So most of the HR solutions doesn't have the ability to integrate with social media. They use it for different purposes, starting from recruitment to check how people are talking about organization on the on social media. So essentially looking at how is the organization value on the social media is handled by such solutions. Another increasingly common feature that is being seen across modern day HR solutions is the ability to integrate with third-party applications. So I'll explain this with an example. So suppose there's an HR solution, and now they are probably looking at an ability to do a video interviews. So rather than creating the solution on their own, they are more likely to, or they build solutions that have an ability to integrate with third-party apps. So probably an existing app which allows video interviews. To give you another example, suppose there's an HR solution which exists there, and currently they are doing the reference check manually. So they would, so the solution would have ability to integrate with an existing app that does the reference checking. So these are probably the areas where third-party application comes in. And the fourth point for today's modern data solution is analytics. So if we talk about analytics, we probably have to look at how other functions have leveraged this. So if we talk about something like sales, marketing, so those sort of functions are using analytics to its using analytics potential to a great extent. So they are using it to make decisions. So essentially, analytics for them is playing a strategic role, whereas HR function are not really utilizing the full potential of data which they have. So they have huge data with them, but they are not really using the full potential of analytics, so that they can also use that analytics to make strategic decisions. So now, having looked at how does a modern day HR solution look, let's talk about what does a modern day HR solution do. So it automates information sharing. So if we consider an example, so if there's a process, then all the stakeholders in the process have the information. So there's a consistent view of consistency of data, and all the stakeholders have a required view of the information with them. So no need of manually sending information to any actor in a process. Second thing is it automates processes. So again, I'll like to explain this with an example. So if we have to consider a review of an employee, so all the actors in the process, be it the employee, be it the manager, be it the HR, be it the skip level manager, all the actors are defined. All the actions that need to be taken by the actors are defined. The flow of information from one actor to other actor is defined. So the modern day HR solution takes care of all this. So essentially, the process is automated. Now modern data solution also automates and eliminates clerical work. So things like filling up duplicate information, filling up forms for which information already exists in the system are really eliminated by a modern day HR solutions. So HR can now focus energy on much more crucial tasks. And the fourth point is modern HR solution does reporting, and it does reporting to a great extent. So wherein you can create basic reports, you can create advanced reports, you can create templates, reports, you can export reports in different formats. So all that is taken care of by a modern HR solution. So now, having looked at how does it look and what does it do, let's see what it does not do. Okay, so modern HR solution is really not aiding HR professional in decision making. So if you have to consider the process of promotion, so over here in this figure we are showing the promotion process of an employee. So in the process involved are employee, manager, and the HR. So the employee will fill the form, the manager would validate the form, the manager would provide ratings based on the employee performance. It goes to the HR and the HR calibrates those ratings. Other than that, other information that an HR might need for a promotion of to make a decision is feedback from manager about the role of the employee and what does the employee feel about the organization. So the feedback about the organization from the employee, and depending on that, the HR is making the decision of whether the promotion needs to be given or not. Now, if we have to look at this process over here, all the actions which are represented by the rectangles over here are taken care of by the HR solution. All the flow of information or data that is represented by the arrows over here is being taken by the HR solution. But the decision making of promotion has to be done by the HR. So the HR systems are not really enabling HR professionals to make such decisions. So for a decision like this, an HR needs to compile a whole lot of information. It could be 360-degree reviews, it could be past 2 years performance, it could be roadmap of the organizations ahead, what's the plan of the organization. So the HR solutions are not really compiling those information and presenting an HR what would be a best decision. The HR needs to make the decision on its own from the scratch. So essentially, with modern day HR solutions not enabling HR professional to make decisions, decision making is a bottleneck. So I'll use 2 more examples to put forward this point. So if we have to take a look at questions like identifying employees at flight risk. Now this is really a qualitative question over here. So is analytics really helping HR professionals to make these decisions? Not, they are not. So they probably have an information about when employee has joined, how many employees have left, how many employees have joined recently, that sort of information, but not really which are the employees who are about to leave, and going a step further, what actions we should take so that they do not leave. So that sort of information or problems are not really being tackled by the solutions. Another example would be selecting right employees for training. So you design a training program, but who should attend those training programs? Which are the employees who are most likely to benefit from this? So again, such problems are not really being tackled by the HR solutions. Decision regarding such problems or problem discussed earlier are generally based on experience, preset rules, precedents, and in some cases it's even the intuition of the person. Now the problem with this approach is this approach does not really evolve very quickly. So there could be a trend that the data is capturing, but a human is not able to capture as quickly. So probably a human might spend about an year to capture that trend, whereas an algorithm or a software will do that pretty quickly. At times, what happens is all the inputs that are needed to make decisions are not available to the individual. So the decision is made with incomplete information. And such decisions are more likely to be questioned by people in the organization. Like if the decisions are based on probably precedents and intuitions, people are more likely to question why was such a decision taken. Whereas if it's a data informed decision, you can give a more stronger answer why was such a decision taken. So it helps over there. Another point which regarding over here is, in the current situation, the knowledge base essentially lies with the individual. So as long as the individual is with the organization, the knowledge is with the organization. But if the individual leaves, the knowledge leaves with the organization. Whereas if you have a system wherein data is giving you the ability to make such decisions, so the data is always with the organization. So that ability would stay with the organization even if the employee leaves. So essentially decision making is a bottleneck. So now, having talked about how does a modern day HR solution look, what does it do, what it cannot do, now Gautam will talk to you about the solution part, how people analytics can help solve this problem.
Right. So, thank you, Lalit, for that. As you can see, and as Lalit said so well, the problem in modern HR systems is decision-making aid. It's really not provided in any kind of meaningful way. There is, there is reporting. We do have the means to extract data from the database, but we don't really have it in a way that is, that is consistent and that is applied to the best of its potential. So the role of people analytics is to leverage the data that we have available to us in order to help us in making decisions. And the reason why, people analytics is feasible now and why it's taking off so much is because the amount of data that's available to the system is exploding. We live in a big data world, and this means that not only is the data available to us internally through our own systems, that is to say through our enterprise databases which capture information about the employee, we also have a lot of data from external sources. So, every employee in an organization is bound to have some kind of social media presence nowadays, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Glassdoor, whether it's on GitHub, GitHub, especially for the software industry. And as a result, you have not only data that you record about your employee yourself in your enterprise database, but you also have lots of data available about the employee outside, about what he behaves like, what his strengths and weaknesses are, what kind of, what is his, what kind of contacts he has, what kind of interests and hobbies he has, what his career goals are. All of this information is available to us, and it's a waste that we don't exploit it to the best of its potential. And so the role of people analytics is really to address this gap in knowledge and as a result a gap in decision making. So let's talk about another aspect of this, which is that as opposed to earlier times, when you had maybe systems looking at different aspects of the employee's time with the organization, now you have systems which cover the entire employee life cycle, starting with something like a recruitment solution, which maybe records CVs, which records references and credentialing and things like that. You have solutions for onboarding. You have solutions which cover the employee's time in the organization. Learning management tools, payroll tools, leave management tools, annual review management, all that kind of stuff. And you also have systems which cover offboarding, which capture data about the employee at the end of his life cycle. And so, now with the amount of data that every employee generates and which the enterprise itself generates, it's possible to have a very good image of every employee's time in the organization, and it's really possible to make very good data-driven decisions, which earlier might not have been possible. And so that's what people analytics is about. So let's talk about the role of analytics in the HCM stack. So currently, the HCM stack that we have looks a bit like this. There is a data layer. There's data not only from the HCM system, but also from other enterprise databases. There's sales data, there's operational data, and of course there's data, external data, which we can capture. And all of this data is available to us, and all of this data drives the business logic of the company. So you have, in HR specifically, business processes related to recruitment, benefits, workforce planning, leave management, payroll, learning management, and so on. And obviously, there is a presentation layer. Why? Because there are HR personnel who utilize the system and who therefore need to have a visibility of the data in the system, and also who need to drive and oversee and control the business processes in the system. So where does analytics fit in? So the role of analytics in the HR, in the HCM stack, is to utilize the data that is available to us in order to drive business logic and also drive the presentation layer. Now, there are different kinds of analytics available to us. There's reporting, there's reactive analytics, there's predictive analytics, and we'll talk about this in detail later. But what analytics does in the HCM stack is it utilizes data from all of the enterprise systems and uses it to drive the business processes of the company. Some of them it automates, some of them it provides visibility for, some of them it controls. And lastly, also the role of analytics is to make visible insights, trends, and other kinds of information that is available in the data to the presentation layer and therefore to the HR personnel. And this can be done in a number of ways. This can be done through dashboards, reports, and KPI metrics. And also increasingly, with the advent of predictive analytics, we're seeing things like, for example, action report where decision making is automated and all the HR personnel is presented with is just a kind of summary of how the decision was made, what was the trend in the data that caused a certain decision to be made a certain way. And so that is the place that analytics occupies in the HCM stack. So what is the role of people analytics? What is the advantage and why is it necessary to have people analytics in the HCM stack? Well, number one is that integrating people analytics into your HCM stack really improves the integration of HR functions with your core business functions. Currently HR functions are kind of still in a support role where the organization decides on a strategy and goes ahead with executing it, and HR is kind of just there in support to make sure that the strategy is executed as well as possible. But with something like people analytics and with a data-driven approach to HR, HR can become a key component of strategic decision making in the company. There is a potential for HR to occupy a place at the strategy making table, so that when a company decides its strategy, it decides not only on the basis of traditional factors like the state of the market and so on, but also on the basis of what its own workforce is like and what its workforce is capable of achieving and how its workforce can be improved and how its workforce can be driven to achieve the targets that it has set for itself. And this can really improve not only the HR function within the enterprise, but the performance of the entire company. Now, a third point is that integrating people analytics into the system leads to decisions which are based on evidence. And this has the huge advantage of improving the transparency of processes within the company, so that not only can you do you have the advantages of the fact that there is a kind of you have a system that's not really prone to human bias, and you have a system which can be made openly visible to all of your employees, but also by introducing transparency, you can really improve the employee's experience in the company. You can improve his engagement in the different processes in the company, and you can improve the way in which the employee interacts with HR, and this can be a huge advantage to employee morale and to employee retention at the end of the day. Also, another advantage you have is that integrating something like people analytics means that you have processes which are result driven. You no longer have processes which are kind of static and rigid and set in stone and which don't respond to the changing trends in the external environment and within your enterprise itself. You can have processes which are fine-tuned to achieve the results that you want them to, and which will adapt along with changes in context and changes in environment. And this can again be a huge advantage, as opposed to something in the modern day where you would have to you might see a trend in data, but you'd be too late to understand it, and then you'd have to retroactively understand what is the change in context and then change your processes to suit it. So, I mean, as you can see, people analytics plays a huge role in the modern HR system, and it can provide some really big competitive advantages to any company which implements it in a proper manner. But how does it work exactly? So the goal of people analytics is to extract insights from data. HR data hides a tremendous amount of insights, whether it's trends, whether it's patterns in data, it can also, you can also use people analytics as an investigative tool in order to find causal factors. You can understand insights about the behavior of your employees, and so the goal of people analytics is to extract the insights that are hidden in data and show them to the right people so that they can make the right decisions at the right time. And really, data is the key to all of this. So how do we extract insight from the data? As I said before, there are three ways of doing this. There's reporting, which is already implemented to a large extent in most places, where you have data and then you basically just assemble the data and show it in a meaningful way through a report or through some kind of interactive dashboard, and that helps your HR personnel to make the decisions themselves. But over here, there is still a lot of human involvement. There is still a person that needs to go through all of the reports, that needs to understand them, that needs to process the information that he's been given, and then make a decision. There is also reactive analytics, where you can look at retroactively what has been going on in your company. You can try to understand what are the factors that caused an event to happen a certain way. Excuse me. And then you can make decisions on the basis of that. But increasingly, we are seeing people resort to something. Sorry everyone, there's a problem with the audio. So as I said, increasingly we are seeing systems where predictive analytics is being used to a huge extent, where the process of decision making itself is automated. And there are some big advantages to this. One of the main advantages is that the human involvement is no longer necessary, or at least it's not required. It's only required in a kind of an oversight kind of role. It is possible now to build systems which proactively make decisions based on the data that's available to them, and which can then present the results or present the actions that they've taken to a human observer who verifies whether or not these decisions were taken correctly. And so it's this last one that we're going to be focusing on in particular. Why? Because I think the first two most of you will be familiar with, and they're things that are being implemented to a large extent. But predictive analytics is something new, and it's something really powerful. And we at Harbinger believe that it will really drive the future of people analytics. So let's talk about predictive analytics. How do you, if you have an HR system which has a lot of data and you want to implement some kind of predictive analytics on it, how would you go about it? What is the methodology you would use? So one thing that needs to be kept in mind is that people analytics problems can basically be reduced to three kinds of problems. In any kind of decision making that you have to do in HR, generally speaking, you're doing one of three things. You're either doing some kind of clustering, which is to say that you are thinking about, you have a number of data points and you want to decide which one is closest. Or you're doing regression, which is where you want to understand some kind of number. Or you're doing classification, where you want to sort a data point into a number of categories. So I'm going to give you a brief example of all of these three. So talking about clustering would be something like this. So, I think Lalit mentioned the example of employees at flight risk earlier. So what would be a good way to capture, which of your employees are most likely to leave the company? and which employees would cause the most problems for you by leaving the company. So the idea over here is to kind of understand which employees are your key performers. And there are a number of metrics which already exist to judge the performance of the employees. And then the other point is to understand that of these key performers, which ones are the most likely to leave. And so, if you have a plot of, say, performance versus exit probability like we have here, then you can kind of understand, which are my very good employees who are the most likely to leave the company. And you can basically create a cluster that says, these are my high-risk employees that I need to focus on them, that I need to make happy, and to understand how to keep their morale high. And you can understand that in other segments, maybe you don't need the same focus and the same effort. So that's a clustering problem. A regression problem would be something like this. Every company does some kind of workforce planning. You know that you have a certain kind of strategy. You know that you have certain projects in the pipeline. What is the workforce that you will require in order to achieve the results that you have set for yourself? So something like this would be regression, because you are trying to predict a number. You are trying to understand that based on the parameters that I have set for myself, what quantity of workforce do I need in order to achieve the results that I planned. And so, basically, whenever you are trying to predict a quantity, what you have is a regression problem. And lastly, another kind of problem you can deal with is a classification problem. So this would be something like, if you want to understand what kind of employees are getting promoted in your company, then you could try and understand what are the categories in which most of the promoted employees belong. So you could say that people with a performance rating of more than 7 on 10 and who have a tenure of more than 3 years in the company are mostly getting promoted, whereas people who aren't doing so well, who have a lower performance rating than 7 and who have about less than 10 years experience, are mostly not getting promoted. So basically, if you have a fixed number of categories, promoted, not promoted in this case, and you want to understand how employees are split into those categories, then what you're dealing with is a classification problem. Okay, so now you've understood the problem at hand, but how do you proceed from there? So knowing, so having defined the problem statement for yourself and having understood what kind of problem that particular problem statement is, the next thing you need to do is identify what is the data that I require in order to solve this problem. And secondly, how do I get it? Where do I get it from? And so identifying the data required would be to kind of understand, what are the key parameters or what are the key attributes that will probably affect a certain process in my company, and whether or not this data is being recorded in my system, whether or not I have some kind of data that needs to be brought in from outside in order to supplement what I have in my system, and so on. So once you build a kind of an analytical data model, the next step is to define an algorithm and to define a tech stack in order to start addressing this problem. And so, based on the type of problem you have, classification, regression, or clustering, you would choose a particular algorithm, and you would also choose the technology that you would use to implement this algorithm. And the choice of technology depends on a lot of factors. It can depend on what your current data architecture is, what your particular expertise is. It can also depend on, for example, what kind of technology is most suited to solve this particular problem, and so on. So now you have your data, you know what kind of problem you're trying to solve, and you know specifically what algorithm am I going to use to solve this problem. But the last important step you need to take up is, how do I verify the quality of my results? When you build a predictive system, you need to ensure that the predictions that this system is giving you are good and accurate and are good enough for you to use for your decision-making purposes. And so, the way we do this is by utilizing test data. So generally speaking, you would utilize the data that you have with you in order to train your algorithm, in order to build your prediction system. But At the same time, you would also keep some of that data aside, which would be test data and which you would use to verify the quality of your results. And you would try to make predictions on data that you already know about. And if the predictions that come out are what you expect, then you have a system that works. And it very rarely happens that in the first shot we have a system that's good enough to be pushed to production. Usually what happens is that you start off building an initial system which gives you results which aren't that great, but then you kind of tweak it in order to work better. And that can be, you can tweak it by modifying the data that you pass to it. You can decide whether you need more data or sometimes less data, or whether sometimes you need to carry out some kind of operations on the data. It could be that you need to take the mean of a bunch of numbers or something of that sort. And also, you would try and tweak your algorithm. You would try and change the parameters, or you would try and select a better algorithm which would be better suited to your particular use case. And then you would continue to verify the quality of data. And so these 4 steps that we've shown are really an iterative process that you keep carrying out until you end up with with results that are good enough quality for you to implement a prediction system. So that's the general way in which we implement people analytics. Now we're going to talk about 2 use cases which Lalit mentioned. The first one is with talent acquisition and how to make the process of talent acquisition more efficient. So this is to do with candidate profiling and sentiment analysis. These are the 2 general kinds of problems we had to solve in this particular case. So we had a company which uses a recruitment software to hire talent. And so this software kind of handles the process of candidate profiling and credentialing. You have candidates who submit a CV and who also submit recommendation letters and references from past employers and so on. And these people would write, about how the candidate was when they had worked with them and so on. So there was a first level filter, which is more like a spam filter, which kind of just filters out CVs which are obviously just rubbish, and the rest of them had to be profiled manually, which means that an HR person actually had to sit down and read through all of the CVs and then read through all of the recommendation letters and so on. So as you can imagine, this is an extremely time-consuming process, and also it's prone to human bias because at the end of the day, you have a person sitting there and actually reading the CVs manually. So what you need is an intelligent filter to facilitate the recruitment process. So what data do we have to work with? The first is candidate data, which is the data the candidate submits about himself, which could be his CV, and also what data we found out about the candidate from outside links, his LinkedIn profile, his GitHub profile, and so on. And we also had data about the requisition, which is to say that when the job advert was published, what kind of educational qualifications had we called for, what kind of experience do we require, and also what the candidate's role is going to be within the company, what kind of responsibilities is he going to get. So basically, having all of this data about the candidate and data about the job that he's applied for, we needed to understand how do we implement some kind of smart system which can filter out good candidates. So we decided to do 2 things. The first was text analysis to compare the candidate's CV and his social media profile against the job description that we had published. So essentially, we have a system which scans the text and which already has information about the job description, and which compares, how good a fit the candidate is for the job that he has applied for. And based on the text that's in the candidate's CV and based on how well it matches up against, the text in the job description, and also other data about, say, how many years of experience does the candidate seem to have, what is the quality of the work that he has done, what is the quality of the education that he's received, and so on. And secondly, we have data about, we sentiment analysis on the feedback we got about the candidate. So all of those references and recommendation letters that he submits, we carry out sentiment analysis and we try to understand what the candidate's strengths and weaknesses are. And so, having done both of these things, what we do is we present the HR personnel with a dashboard, which first of all compares how good the candidate is for the job that we require, and also how good the candidate is in general according to his previous employers, according to his peers, according to his ex-colleagues, and so on. And with this dashboard, really we can present a very good summary of the candidate to an HR person. And we can also provide a recommendation of, based on our analysis, which are the top 3 candidates for this particular position out of all those who have applied. The advantage of this is that it provides a number of benefits. First of all, decision making is improved because the process of decision making is much more objective, as opposed to sort of a very opaque decision making, which depended completely on the HR person. We have something much more objective through our dashboard now. And also, because you have a dashboard in the first place, you don't need to sit and manually go through all of the CVs. You have a dashboard which can summarize the best candidates, which can summarize what are each candidate's strengths and weaknesses and how good a fit each candidate is. And so it really simplifies the process and reduces the amount of effort you need to put in. And as a result, the entire workflow is much more efficient. So the second use case was to do with basically a training program, how to improve employee engagement in training programs, and how to improve the success of training programs in an organization. So we have a company that runs training programs for all of its employees. But currently, the way that it works is that either the employee's manager recommends the employee for a training program, or secondly, employees can go themselves and request a particular kind of training. But of course, this kind of choice isn't very well adapted because it doesn't take into account the larger picture, the larger context, and as a result, the organization often faces a skill gap in relation to its projects. And so we needed to build a system which can address this. We needed to understand, which are the best employees to put into a training program, and we needed to understand, what kind of training programs are actually needed in the organization. So that, we have 2 kinds of data here. We have data about the employee. We have, say, demographic data. We have data about his skills. We know his educational background. We know his experience in his time with the company and before that. And also we know about the employee as a part of the workforce. That is to say, we know what his designation is, what his roles and responsibilities are, what kind of work he's going to need to do in the near future, and so on. So based on this, what we decided to do was to use clustering algorithms in order to create different employee segments. And for each cluster, we identified what their characteristics were and what the gap in their particular skill sets was. So as a result, we managed to split our employees into a number of different segments, and we were able to identify what were the defining characteristics of the segment and what kind of training they actually needed. So the benefits of this were 3. The first was that training programs can be designed specifically to fit particular segments, and since you know what kind of lack of skills you're dealing with, you can tailor training programs in order to specifically fit those candidates. The second advantage is that knowing where my skill gap is and knowing what kind of training I need, I can build training programs and I can decide training objectives which are much more aligned to the needs of my organization. And lastly, because you are more likely to address the problems that employees themselves are facing, the engagement in training programs is improved a lot, because now employees can find training programs that they are interested in because they know they have that particular lack of skills. And so, the benefits of this were also huge. So, in conclusion, people analytics is an emergent field with a lot of potential. It's going to become a really key part of systems in the future, and it's going to become something that every organization will need to one extent or another. However, it's not a silver bullet. It's no substitute for HR people because engaging with employees on a personal level is still quite crucial. However, what people analytics can do is help HR people to make strategic decisions about the people in the enterprise and therefore improve not only the engagement of employees and the happiness of employees within the enterprise, but also improve the performance of the organization by ensuring that the workforce is up to the requirements of the organization. Thank you for your time. This is the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, please type them out and we'll be happy to answer as many as we can in the time that remains. Okay, so we have a question here. What if we don't have an HR system for data analytics? How effective is Excel? Well, Excel is effective to an extent. However, the limitation of Excel is that it can only show you what's happened in the past. And also the fact is that, it is possible to do reactive analytics in Excel, but again, that can only teach you about what has happened in the past and what the problem was with a particular situation that has already happened, but it can't make any predictions about the future, and it can't tell you what kind of changes you should be making in order to avoid potential situations in the future, or in order to have certain kinds of result in the future. So that is a situation in which Excel would be deficient, and you would need a system that's much more tailor-made to your requirements.
We have another question over here. So the question is, how to identify opportunities for people analytics in an HR system? So the answer to this really lies into your activities that you carry out day to day. So what are the problems you need to think about? What are the problems that you face very often? What are the most common things wherein you often find yourself lacking, or are you often miss the targets that you set? So things like how many employees we would be needing, who are the high performers who are likely to leave, okay, what kind of training does a particular set of employees need. So if you are facing problems to such questions, then there's a hint. So this is where the opportunities lies. You need to select the problem, work on it, streamline, bring it to a very crisp problem wherein you can say, I want this, and then you can start evaluating what data you have to solve that problem. Once you are fine with the data, once you have the problem and you have selected the data, it's about implementing using the steps that we have shown in the webinar.
Okay, so there's another question. Will the analytics module work parallelly to the existing stack, or will rework be required in order to integrate analytics? So the answer to this is it depends on your application. Obviously, ideally, you would want all your processes to be driven by analytics, but as we all know, very often this is not possible. So practically speaking, basically the people analytics will be implemented in many different modes in the company. So in some scenarios, you might need a predictive system which will replace the existing business logic. In others, in other systems, predictive systems can supplement the existing infrastructure. And in some scenarios, existing with business logic will just continue the way it is, with analytics playing a small supporting role simply by carrying out some kind of diagnoses or by carrying out some process of reporting. So really, it depends on your application and it depends on what your current system is.
The next question that we have is, are there any pre-built solutions or modules that can be plugged and played in an existing HR system? So, so there are none. To tell you the truth, there is no system which you can just plug and play in your HR system. So every organization, every HR system would have unique problems, unique data sets. So the data analytics solution needs to be created for that particular problem according to that particular data set. So data could be structured, it could be unstructured, it could be in the form of text, it could be in the form of images. Depending on how the data is and what the problem is, the solution would need to be created. Only thing is the steps that were discussed in the webinar remains common while creating the solution.
Okay, so we have time for one last question now, which is there's a question: will people analytics eliminate the need for HR personnel? No, absolutely not. Why? Because there's no replacement at the end of the day for just a one-on-one conversation with employees to understand their problems and to find solutions for their particular situations. So analytics can't replace that, but basically the role of analytics would be to reduce the amount of time and energy that an HR person will spend on tasks which can be automated or decisions which can be automated, and to give them more time to do the jobs that some kind of personal touch is required for. So it'll never completely replace HR personnel. However, the kind of skills that are required to become part of the HR personnel will change in the future, because HR people will also need to understand the process of analytics and how to implement it, because at the end of the day, people analytics is going to change the way that HR works, and so that is something that you will have to be prepared for. So thank you for attending our webinar. This will be the end of it. Please do visit us on decisions.Now and write to us at hsinfo@harvingergroup.com, and follow these links to our various social media presences, and we'd be glad to hear about your feedback about this webinar and also any other future queries we might have. We will be answering all of the other questions that we get through email, and we will mail you those answers as soon as we can. So thank you very much for your time and hope to see you soon.